geez, well, that guy did it this way. And I think there's a lot more communication that needs to happen. And I'm sure you guys know the skilled trades workforce is aging pretty rapidly, and there's a lot of knowledge out there that just needs to be shared. And some of that is changing with the internet and social media and podcasts like this.
Welcome to the Fine Homebuilding Pro Talk Podcast, our regular discussion with building industry professionals. This is Senior Editor Patrick McComb. Today I'm joined by Ross MacPherson, a HERS rater and AeroBarrier dealer in Plimpton, Massachusetts. You can find the Fine Homebuilding Pro Talk Podcast and the original Fine Homebuilding Podcast at finehomebuilding.com/podcast. You can leave feedback and ask questions there too. Ross, it's good to see you again. How are you, man?
I'm doing great, Patrick. How are you?
Good. So everyone healthy at home? Things are okay?
Yeah, no, my family's doing pretty well. We're pretty lucky. We've been managing as best we can. The kids have been out of school for a while, and that's been a challenge. But luckily, my wife and I have some flexibility with work, so we've been making do. How about yourself?
It's weird still, but it's become the new normal, I would say, around here. My son started back to school remotely 2 weeks ago. This is his second week. So he's going full days now, and I hear him up there engaging with his teachers. So that seems to be okay.
Good.
And I don't hear any yelling.
Yeah.
Can you talk about how you started out in the residential construction business, Ross?
Yeah, sure. So my path to residential construction is kind of a circuitous route. I grew up on Martha's Vineyard, working with boats, working on the harbors. And after I graduated from college, I started working with a man named Don Cohan, who, among his many accomplishments, was a real estate developer, a lawyer, and an Olympic-winning medal sailor. And so I managed a small fleet of boats for him, and I sailed with him in New England regional races throughout the summer. He liked to be competitive as best he could. So that was kind of my job for a few years. And Don taught me a great deal about how to approach a project, a race, a challenge, basically any situation one can encounter. And I ended up restoring and refitting a number of his wooden sailboats over the years. And that's really kind of my introduction into craftsmanship and working with my hands. And as he got older, he started downsizing his boat collection a little bit. So I decided it was time to get a real job on the mainland. And
I don't know why you did that, man.
That was the worst decision of my life. I started working in a graphic print house in the seaport of Boston in January 2008, which was a great time to get into graphics and advertising, just as everyone was slashing their budgets.
Right.
And the financial crisis was going on.
Yeah.
Oh, it was terrible. So I got laid off from that job in 2009 in January. So I was there for just over a year, and I needed a job, any job. So my cousin had a construction company, Archaea Homes, based out of Duxbury, Mass. And I think he took a little bit of pity on me. He's much older than I am, and he hired me as a laborer and a gopher. And that's where I really got experienced in residential construction.
Did your boat building help make you a better carpenter's helper?
I think so. I think it might have on the overall project side of things. Once I got into project management, I think that's where it really kind of helped. So I kind of realized quickly on that I didn't want to be a laborer and a gopher. That was not something that was a good fit for me. So I tried to figure out what I could do to differentiate myself and do something different. So I got into a little bit of property management for some of the clients that he had worked with, and eventually got into project management for him. And that's where I really started learning a lot about residential construction, how things go together, what trades interact with each other well, what trades don't interact with each other well that you need to plan around. And that was something that I really enjoyed. And then around 2014, I kind of felt I was stagnating. I needed a new challenge. And Massachusetts had just adopted the 3 ACH 50 mark for all new construction. And we'd had a HERS rater on one of our projects a couple of years earlier. And I thought, geez, this is a lot of the stuff I like about construction without having to deal with homeowners, which was an extra bonus. So I went in 2014 and I got certified as a HERS rater. And I've been working as a HERS rater full time through late 2018 when I came across AeroBarrier. So I still do a few HERS ratings here and there and some consulting as well. And this fall, I think I'll hit the 1,000th HERS rating that I'll have completed. So that's kind of a cool milestone. But that's in a nutshell, my path into and through residential construction.
So this is a perfect segue. What the heck is a HERS rater? What does even HERS stand for?
Sure. So HERS stands for Home Energy Rating System, and it's the industry standard for evaluating a home's energy performance. And as more and more building codes are specifically calling for HERS ratings to show compliance with the energy codes, they're also directly referencing the ResNet standards. And ResNet is the body that oversees HERS raters, and they set the standards for how a HERS rating is completed. So a HERS rating is a holistic look at the house, incorporating all the components that have an impact on energy usage. So you're looking at things like windows, insulation, mechanical equipment, appliances, and all the performance testing that goes along with that, duct testing, ventilation testing, and blower door air leakage testing.
So
And
correct me if
go
I'm
ahead.
wrong. So like a normal code built house has a HERS rating of 100, and the better performing the house is, the lower the number. Is that correct?
So yeah, the HERS rating is a scale typically from 100. Theoretically, it could be from 0 to anything. It's a typical house built in about 2006 scores about 100,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like golf, lower's better. So in Massachusetts, to pass most of the energy code, you have to have a HERS score of 55. So that's 45% better than a home built 15 or so years ago.
And is
So
that
it's
a typical number for the homes that you were working on?
Yeah, most of the homes that we're working on are just trying to get past code. They're not necessarily trying to be a passive house or an Energy Star certified home, although some of them could be Energy Star certified as is. But most people are just looking for that basic code compliance and then move on, build the next one.
Would you agree that a code compliant house is actually a pretty good one now?
I think in Massachusetts, a code compliance house is certainly a good house. Could it be better? Absolutely. But we're starting to get to the point where as we make it better, those incremental gains are costing a lot more than they did 5, 10 years ago.
In
So
terms of money?
in terms of money, yeah, exactly. So it's costing more and more to get a progressively better house.
So you're working as a HERS rater, right? And you get introduced to AeroBarrier, and I think you told me that you were watching This Old House where you first saw it. What attracted you to that? What made you want to pull the trigger to become one of these installers, the dealers?
Yeah, so initially I saw it in the fall This Old House magazine.
Mm.
And then I thought, oh, geez, that's kind of cool. Let me take a look at that. And then I kind of forgot about it for a month or two. And it showed up on the show in early January. And I looked at it and I went, geez, that's really cool. And I think a lot of builders could benefit from that.
What
So
was appealing to you about it? Like, it was very new technology, right?
it was very new technology. I think when that show aired, it had been out for just about 12 months commercially available. So it was really new. I liked the fact that they were measuring as they go. I mean, the old adage is you can't change what you can't measure. And if they're measuring all the time and making it better, I mean, it just makes so much sense to me. So that's what really attracted me was the predictability and the reliability of it. And we just kind of took it from there.
Mm. So you decided after seeing this program and you contacted AeroBarrier and bought a dealership, right? Is that how it works?
Pretty much, yeah. They kind of take a look at who you are, what your background is, to make sure it's a good fit. That it's not just Joe Schmo off the street who's never done anything in residential construction and going to go start this AeroBarrier dealership. That's not a great recipe for success for either party.
Mm-hmm.
So we talked with them. We found out exactly what it was going to cost, what we could expect. I started reaching out to a lot of dealers that were already existing out there. Guys from Vancouver to Vermont, talking to them about what they're seeing, what's working, what's not working. And even right now, what works for us in Massachusetts is not working for guys in Oregon, and vice versa. The way they're running their business is not going to work here. So it was interesting to see and hear what other people were doing to try to get an idea of what we were going to do. And early on, we thought there would be this great demand for the reliability of being able to guarantee a blower door result pretty early in the build process. And what we found was that we were almost victims of our own success as HERS raters, helping builders to get to a 3 ACH for the last, at that point, 4 years, and without doing an entirely foam house. So we quickly shifted to a cost
Because
optimized.
these builders would say, well, why do I need to spend money on AeroBarrier? I'm already getting my 3 air changes per hour. Why do I need this? Is that right?
Exactly. That's the exact question I was getting from builders is why do I need this? So we switched to a cost optimized approach. So in the HERS ratings, we have lots of different parts and pieces that we can trade off. You could do better mechanical equipment in case you have, more glazing. If you're by the ocean and you've got 30% of your wall area is glazing, that's going to have an energy impact on your HERS rating. So you want to try to trade off and offset that with something else, higher efficiency mechanical equipment, better appliances, better insulation, better air sealing, things like that. So I kind of looked at that and I said, well, what if we can value engineer these homes so that the energy performance is maintained, but the equation of how that energy performance was achieved is a little different. So maybe instead of using foam in targeted areas that also had R value and air sealing components, what if we just took the insulation package to purely worried about R value? And then AeroBarrier could be the air sealing package. And once you've made insulation purely about the R value, it opens up a huge realm of possibilities of what you can put in that wall cavity or that ceiling assembly to get the R value and still have cost savings. So what we've
In the
done
simple
is
terms, that frees up money for something else, right? Or
exactly, we're trying to show the builder we can offset the cost of AeroBarrier with X, Y, and Z. And now if you're cost neutral, you've got this guarantee of passing your blower door test or hitting your whatever your blower door test target is. Sometimes it's 2 ACH, 1 ACH, passive house of 0.6. So that guarantee is what was hard initially to quantify because it's worth different things to different builders. So I wanted to make sure I could show builders without quantifying that guarantee, we could make their project cost neutral adding AeroBarrier.
That's interesting. So, what are the other challenges besides correctly marketing this to the right person with being an AeroBarrier dealer? Is it seasonal? Or you're obviously tied in with the construction industry. If there's no new homes being built, you're not going to be selling AeroBarrier. Are there other challenges similar to that?
Yeah, there's challenges in anything, but with AeroBarrier, we want to make sure it's the right project. There's no silver bullet for air sealing. We can take a house as tight as it's designed or built to be. If we have a house that somebody's just thrown together and they say, I want to take it to passive house, 0.06 or 0.6, we're probably not going to be able to get there with AeroBarrier because there's probably holes bigger than AeroBarrier can seal. Mm-hmm. So we want to make sure that the house is designed to be as tight as they're intending it to be. We could have ventilation issues where, one tradesperson is not talking to another, and the ventilation system they've designed is for 3 ACH, but the builder doesn't understand that and wants to go to 1 ACH or 1.5. And now, by code, a certain amount of ventilation is required, and the blower door impacts that. So we may have totally screwed up their ventilation strategy to where they have to add another system to make up that ventilation. So there's challenges with the design, but there's also challenges with making sure that builders understand what it can do and what it can't do. So typically we can seal up to about 1/2 inch, but if the building has all 1/2 inch gaps, that's not necessarily the best seal for us. We went and did a project.
You really can't pressurize it enough at that point to make it seal. Is that correct?
Exactly. We've got to have enough pressure to make it work. And if it's just chock full of leaks, it's not the best scenario. We did a house last year where they didn't have any house wrap. It was I'm trying to think. It was boards, 1x8 boards for sheathing on the outside of the house, and they had vinyl siding on top of that. And you've got a 1/4 inch gap between every one of those boards from 70 plus years of shrinkage and drying out. And it took forever to seal. We went through like 20 gallons of sealant on that house, and we weren't expecting that early on. That was one of our early lessons, but it really hit home to identify what houses are good candidates and what houses are not. So in that regard, multifamily is a big area for us. Most of our projects are multifamily new construction. Multifamily renovations are kind of a different animal. You might have a unit next door that's being occupied and lived in, and we don't have construction control of that unit. And if we're
So you're
pressurizing,
blowing sealant right into that neighbor's house, right?
potentially, if the leakage paths go between the two units, there could be sealant that goes from one unit to the other. And you could try to mitigate that by putting a blower door in the adjoining unit and pressurizing it so that there's no pressure drive between the two units. But then you're unable to seal the party wall between those, and it kind of negates some of the benefit. So there's certain situations where we recognize that AeroBarrier is not the best, and we're the first ones to let people know that. And we've got some other air sealers that we work with in the state who do traditional blower door guided air sealing, where they're running a blower door, they're using a smoke pencil, looking around, trying to find where things are leaking and sealing those one by one. And we're quick to recommend those guys when we have a project we don't think is a good fit.
What is a good house for AeroBarrier? How is it built? Does it have any special details? Does it have zip sheathing? I mean, is it pretty normal, or is it something special?
It's pretty normal. Just about any new construction is going to be a good fit for us. The way we build now, all of our exterior walls, the seams of the sheathing land on something, whether it's a stud, a piece of blocking. There's not a lot of leakage or big leakage through the exterior walls. Where we see most of our leakage is going up to an unvented attic or an improperly vented roof assembly. A little bit where the frame meets the foundation. I haven't seen a foundation crew that trowels the top of their foundations, and I haven't seen a plate that hasn't sat out in the rain and air for at least a week. And It's all sorts of twisted, and sill seal is great, but sometimes there's a bigger gap than that can do. So those are the spots we typically see leakage, is kind of at the top and the bottom. So for AeroBarrier, that's a great fit, because when they come in and they'll sheetrock the ceiling of the second floor, typically, then that's our AeroBarrier on that second floor, and we're sealing to the walls and usually the subfloor that goes down to the basement. So new construction is really our target. That's probably 95% of what we do, and most of what we do is actually duplexes or multifamily townhouses.
You told me earlier, and I observed it when I was on your project for a photo shoot, that you like systemizing stuff and making things more efficient. I think you'd agree that this is something the traditional residential construction sector is not very good at. Nearly every project is a prototype. Many things get figured out on the fly. That must drive you crazy. If you could change things with a magic wand, what would they be?
Yeah, so it does drive me crazy. I like efficiency, not just energy efficiency, but time efficiency and process improvement. My brain's just really wired to kind of question the status quo to see if there's a better way to do it. So when I got into AeroBarrier, I looked around to find out who was doing it best. And I came across the guy, Mitchell Spence from AeroBarrier of Utah, who was kind of my go-to resource early on. And he was doing a lot of the stuff that I was thinking about and doing it better than I had thought, because I hadn't had the experience yet. So it was really kind of a process of finding out what everyone else is doing to make our process work. In residential construction in general, I think the industry is really good at working through challenges. Where I think we can improve is sharing that information on how people address those challenges. I know.
You mean builders sharing with builders?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think not necessarily just builders. You could have a plumber sharing what worked with an HVAC guy, because they tend to interact in pretty much the same space in a house. And you might come across something that, oh geez, well, that guy did it this way. And I think there's a lot more communication that needs to happen. And I'm sure you guys know, the skilled trades workforce is aging pretty rapidly, and there's a lot of knowledge out there that just needs to be shared. And some of that is changing with the internet and social media and podcasts like this. I think This Old House was really at the forefront of this idea, kind of sharing the quote unquote secrets of construction with a wider audience. And that's more geared towards homeowners and some tradespeople. But I think that sharing information is definitely where this needs to go. And it's kind of counterintuitive to share what might be someone's competitive advantage. And I'm guilty of that as well. But the more comfortable I get doing this, the more I just end up sharing with other folks, other dealers across the country, even some in our area.
What do you think the biggest challenges are going forward for the residential construction business and your business specifically, and in the coming years and decades? What are our problems we need to solve?
Well, I think in Massachusetts, we've really the enforcement of code has really come to the forefront, and I think a lot of municipalities are enforcing it. Part of that's due to the stretch code adoption. The stretch code in Massachusetts is a voluntary adopted code that's a little bit better than the base building code. Right now, it requires a HERS rating. So, as part of that adoption, the state gives these towns money as an incentive for doing the stretch code and a few other things as well. And they have an accountability system set up because the state is committing money to this. They want to make sure that the towns are complying. And about 83% of Massachusetts has adopted the stretch code. So there's really a good accountability system as far as the code is concerned to really make these houses better. I think improving the efficiency of construction, not just in energy construction, but in the waste factor and hauling out 5 or 6 dumpsters per job. I like the panelization movement, seeing panelized construction really start to take off in production builders around us, and even some of the custom builds is kind of encouraging to see.
So what are you expecting as the next chapter for your business? Are you hoping for huge growth, or do you want things to stay small under your control? Do you have employees now, and what do they do?
Yeah, so we've got a few employees. I've got project AeroBarrier technicians, lead technicians, is LEAD, not LEED, and I've got assistant technicians. So my lead technicians are the guys that are running the software, running the seal. They're responsible for making sure everything goes right. And the assistant technicians are pretty much responsible for preparing the house, making sure the equipment gets set up right, and really learning how to do a seal the right way, understanding what can go wrong during a seal and how to correct it, and just really focusing on learning all the skills so that hopefully those folks can progress to be a lead technician. And as the operations manager, I kind of float around a little bit and help out wherever I need to and do a little bit of everything. I'm also doing all of our in-house training and quality control. As I showed you on our job site, we're testing out these units with a completely different set of equipment after we've pulled everything out to make sure we got where we needed to go.
We should explain that to people. So you use the AeroBarrier system for sealing the house, but instead of relying on that equipment that could have any number of errors, right? You put in a different blower door to verify the data that you think you have.
Yep, exactly. So with the AeroBarrier system, as we talked about sealant going to adjoining units, we also don't want sealant to go into HVAC systems or plumbing. We also don't want it to go into the windows, the operable components of the windows. So we're protecting those and covering those up. And as we do that, we're covering up CFM of leakage in the house.
You're artificially making the house tight, right? Because when you pull all that stuff off, the house is going to be leaky like it was.
Yep. So we do a few tests. We test the house before we put up our protection, and then we test it afterwards. So we know how many CFM of that temporary protection we've just covered up.
And it's usually on the order of a few hundred CFM, right?
Typically, especially when you have double hung windows. Double hung windows just have a brush seal, and there's not really a good air seal there. Some of them can leak 5 to 10 CFM per window at 50 pascals worth of pressure. So we identify that number so that we can work it backwards and kind of do the back of the napkin math so that our seal ends up where we want it to go. And then after we've finished the seal and taken down all of our temporary protection, we're going to test it again and do a third blower door test that's not part of the AeroBarrier system, just to make sure we get where we go. The data usually correlates well. So if we didn't do that, I would be comfortable that we're there, but I just like that knowing and measuring of that. So that's one of the things that's important for us. And on the growth side of things, we are growing. It is part of our future that we're planning for. I also want to grow thoughtfully. I don't want to get to a particular point where we've overextended ourselves in terms of our availability. It's hard to find good help, and I want to make sure that I create an environment where my employees feel fulfilled and rewarded by the process, and also feel like there's growth potential, because I think turnover is what really hurts a lot of businesses, especially for businesses like ours that are running pretty lean in terms of employees.
And you have a significant training program. I mean, you have to train people to do this work. You can't just turn them loose with this stuff, right?
Oh yeah, no, we have. It takes about 6 months of somebody being an assistant technician to be to the point where I think they could be a full lead technician. All of our lead technicians are either ResNet HERS raters or Building Performance Institute certified to do blower door testing. We think it's really important that our staff understand not only how the tests are done, but also why the tests are done, what impacts the blower door, and what knock-on effects they could have if they make a house too tight. Things like we already talked about ventilation, or other challenges that might occur if they don't do things the right way. So it's really hard to find good help, as I'm sure most of your listeners know, that it's really hard to find somebody that knows
Yeah.
what you're doing. And I really can't advertise for somebody that's got AeroBarrier experience because it's only been out for 2.5 years. So
Yeah, and all your fellow dealers would come after you.
So it's really trying to find the right person. If I can find somebody that's got some construction experience, great. But more likely, I'm going to find somebody that can think independently for themselves, that's got some common sense, and that's got a good work ethic. And
Yeah.
I can train the rest. So it's just finding those soft skills and hiring for those is what's been the challenge recently.
I think few people would argue that residential construction is a tough business. It's easy to lose your shirt. It's boom and bust. A lot of things are outside of your control. It's tough on your body. Would you want your kids to be involved in the family business? And do they seem interested in what you do?
They seem interested, but only from the point of a 3 and a 6-year-old. So the truck is very cool. All the equipment is very cool. But as to what they want to do, I don't know what they'll do. But I'm looking back for myself, knowing what I know now, it's a 50-50 chance whether I would have gone to college or gone into the trades. I went to college and graduated from UNH with a degree in economics and have not used it since. I think the analytics part of analyzing things has served me really well. Mm-hmm. But looking back now and knowing what I know and what electricians and plumbers and HVAC guys are making, they're making a fantastic living. Yes. Without having to go to college and without acquiring that debt to go to college. So I'm really comfortable if my boys decide that some part of construction is right for them, as long as they try to be the best person in that field, I'm happy.
That's cool. Well, have you taken them to jobs to show them what you do ever? Have they seen your rig set up?
Oh yeah, no, they come around with me sometimes with school being closed and them being home pretty much for the summer. They've floated around with me as I've gone to check on some of our crews out doing jobs. So they've seen what's going on. Hopefully they're at least the little ones asleep while that's happening. But they've definitely seen it. The truck gets parked in my yard every once in a while for something, whether I need to maintain something or if we've got an early seal and I can get a jump start by getting it a half hour closer. So, but they like it. They think it's cool. They like the trucks. But
who doesn't like trucks?
I know. And that's actually a good point, because most AeroBarrier rigs come in a trailer, and it's a lot cheaper to get a trailer and hook it up to a truck you already own.
Sure.
But I don't know how many of your listeners have driven through some of the old sections of Boston, but there's almost no way you're getting a trailer through some of those places to where there's construction going on.
And you have a lowered cab forward truck to make it more maneuverable, I presume, right?
Yep. Yeah. So we've got a 14-foot box truck that's got a cab over engine. So we're about the same length as your standard double cab pickup truck with a 5 or 6 foot bed. So it's also light enough and small enough that it doesn't require a commercial driver's license. So all of my guys who've got a regular driver's license can drive it, and I don't have to worry about hiring somebody that can drive a trailer but may not be the best AeroBarrier dealer installer, or vice versa. I don't have to worry about scaling up and being able to get something on site and worrying about that particular individual's skill set of driving, which is it's teachable, but it's a lot harder to teach than showing them how to do an AeroBarrier seal. So
yeah, and trailers are tough. I mean, that's a whole other skill set, right?
It definitely is. From my boat days, moving around boats on trailers, it's something that takes a lot of work.
Yeah.
And especially if you're in tight quarters with blind corners. One of the things that I learned early on when COVID hit was we started changing our procedure. Instead of sending 2 guys and trying to do everything in one day, we would separate the crew so that nobody was in a truck with each other for a long time. And what we found was we'd send somebody the day before to do all the prep work and then send another guy to do the seal the next day. And we thought, all right, it's going to cost us a little bit more in labor. And what we found is that we could do, 2 houses worth of prep in a day with one guy and then go to seal. So we actually saved some time and effort, which was a cool little benefit. But it also changed our procedure. So now most of my guys are going off on their own. So trying to back a trailer up to a job site when you're the only ones there, that's just a recipe for disaster. So that's why we put everything in trucks. We've got a couple of trucks built out the way we want them, and it's going really well. We're really happy with the product. We're one of a couple dealers in the world that's part of a team that's looking at what the future of AeroBarrier looks like, and working with the research and development team at AeroBarrier.
Tell me what's coming.
There's some cool stuff coming down the pike sooner or later. I can't really say anything about it, but they're definitely innovating and really making sure that the product is it's well thought out and well built, and they're looking for the future, and they think AeroBarrier is the way to go, and so do we. In the right circumstance, it's absolutely a no-brainer for a lot of builders.
So this is my favorite question, and you probably heard me ask others. Can you tell me about your own house, and are there any lingering building science problems that you're either happily or unhappily ignoring?
Yeah, so I heard this on a few episodes that I listened to, and I thought about it, and I went, oh, what do I have? And so in my house, we've got a small 1,500 square foot, they call it a Dutch gambrel. So it's gambrel in the front and cape in the back. And it came with a finished basement, and by finished I mean one end of the basement had 2x3 walls studded out with some insulation and some sheetrock that wasn't installed very well. The basement slab was still there, and all of the exposed floor joists above were still there. So we decided, all right, well, this would be a nice found space. Space is a premium in this house, and if we can convert it to a partial finished basement that's a real finished basement, that'd be great. So we tore down the sheetrock. This is about 10 years ago, before I really got into understanding building performance. And we tore off the old sheetrock. The insulation looked good. There was enough of a gap between the insulation and the concrete that I wasn't too worried about moisture transfer there. There was a nice air gap for it to breathe a little bit. What I neglected to do was insulate and air seal the rim joist. And I know that it's impacting my performance right now, but I can't bring myself to rip down ceilings and tops of walls and do it right.
Does your second floor have like an attic knee wall space? I mean, that type of house often does, and that must be a problem, right?
It was. So we actually changed the insulation plane there. We had the gambrel roof was insulated, but it was 2x4 frame on that front gambrel, so it was only insulated with an R11.
Yeah.
And so what we did was we took that 2 feet of first floor ceiling, and we cut open the subfloor in that little crawl space, and we dense packed it with cellulose. And then what we did was we insulated the knee wall with R15, and then an inch of rigid board on top of that. So we changed the plane of the insulation in the house and added a lot more R value there, which
Did
also
improve the performance of the house?
I think so. It definitely doesn't feel as cool on those walls anymore. And it's also the north side of the house, so it's nice not to have any windows on that side for performance. But we definitely noticed a little bit of a difference. Not a huge difference air sealing wise, which I was kind of surprised about. But it's definitely a nice little bonus. And we also improved the ventilation going up to our attic as well, when we did that. We've also added some insulation in the attic. I put in a heat pump, so I'm hoping that all that work is kind of penance for my omission on the rim on the rim joist there. Someday when it's not wall-to-wall toys and my kids aren't home 24/7,
right?
And that would be a huge hit to my sanity right now to try to do anything about it. So one day we're going to do something else.
Are you going to come clean with a blower door number?
Yeah. So my blower door number is about 2018.
That's in CFM. What is that for the rest
CFM.
Of us?
Put me on the spot. I think it's somewhere around. I think it's around 10 ACH, 7 to 10 ACH, somewhere in there. It's not great, but I also haven't opened up a ton of stuff above grade. So
you also have little kids running around the house.
I've got little kids running around the house. We added a small mudroom 2 years ago. and that allowed us to have kind of a drop zone for the kids' stuff. And we opened
I
up.
bet that really improved your life.
Oh, tremendously.
Yeah.
That, and we opened up the wall between the dining room and the kitchen. So we've done a few things, but nothing more than 200 square feet of exterior work. So we haven't had the opportunity. The windows that I have are extremely leaky. They're old, actually true divided light, single pane with a storm window. So they're not the worst, but they're not the best. And as those
they're second
out,
worst.
Yeah. they're not exactly high on the list of priorities right now. So
I'm going to ask you another question. It's on the script. I'm going to put you on the spot. So
Yeah.
You're a normal person of normal income. Like, do you have trouble spending money on stuff like that? I mean, you also have this higher level of thinking than many people that this is a problem. But honestly, in real dollars, is how much is it costing, and is it worth to fix?
That's a good question. So it's kind of a double-edged sword, because I look at it and I go, I can calculate the payback from replacing that window. And I know that the payback on that energy performance is not going to justify the cost of replacing the window. So it's tough. I can spend the money for the energy performance as long as there's an aesthetic or functional benefit. Mm-hmm. But beyond that, it's really hard to justify, because I'm a numbers guy, and it just doesn't compute right now to do that, especially with limited resources. If I didn't have limited resources, I would certainly, I'd have 2 inches of zip R on the outside of this house, and it would be nice and tight. But the way things are with young kids in daycare, I don't know if you guys have. I really wish they'd have like a 401k for daycare, because it's just, it's unbelievable.
Ross, it's been a pleasure having you on the show. Thank you so much.
Thanks, guys. It's been great having you.
Anything else you want to tell our listeners?
If anybody is looking for a job, or knows somebody looking for a job in Eastern Massachusetts that wants to learn a good trade that they can make money on, get in touch. Send an email to Ross, ROSS, at neairbarrier.com. I'm happy to talk to any and everybody. There's definitely work out there. And if I can't hire you, I can find somebody else who will most likely hire you.
You might hear from me, man. All right. Well, unfortunately, that's all the time we have for today. Thanks to Ross for joining us, and thanks to all of you for listening. Please remember to send us your comments, questions, and suggestions to fhbpodcast@taunton.com. And please like, comment, or review us however you're listening. It helps other folks find our podcast. Stay safe, everybody. Thanks for listening. Happy building.